Thank you, Mayor Wiggins. A couple items for you tonight. The first being the second reading and potential adoption, amending City Ordinance number 343, number 626, and revising section 8.0.09 of the Municipal Code relating to commercial recycling service, organic recycling service in the City of Tehachapi. On April 2nd, 2018, the City Council approved the implementation of mandatory commercial organics to meet the requirements, state requirements of AB 1826. We went through this in the last meeting, but organic waste refers to food waste, green waste, landscape and pruning waste, non-hazardous wood waste, food, soil, paper waste that's mixed in with food waste. And that program was established via, or sort of after an informational meeting with Cal Recycle, who identified some gaps in the city's recycling plan. And so with our partners with Waste Management, we successfully implemented the commercial organic recycling program and initiated service in August of this past year. Each qualifying business and multifamily residential dwelling was required to subscribe to the service as part of their commercial trash service. So with that, the last sort of necessary item is to officially put this in the municipal code and amend the city ordinance 343 and 626. So on December 17th, we had the first reading, and council approved that first reading of the ordinance amendments, and staff recommends in order to continue compliance with AB 1826, council approved the amendments to the ordinances and the Tehachapi Municipal Code.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments concerning this from the audience? Council?
This is by title only. Can we have someone read the title to the ordinance? I don't have it up. You have it up, Corey?
The ordinance numbers, or
just the title to the ordinance above the above the text.
Yeah, it is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Tehachapi amending ordinance numbers 343 and 626 and Tehachapi Municipal Code section 8.04.090 relating to diversion of organic waste.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Motion on staff's recommendation to adopt.
Do I have a second? Did you have a question?
This is just the reading, right?
I have a question.
No,
This is the adoption.
this is the adoption.
This is the full adoption?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, on the,
Turn on your mic.
okay.
You may have to hold that a little closer.
I have a PE voice, that should go all over the place. Okay, on the city council of the city of Tehachapi does ordain as follows. It says the amendment, and on the ordinance number, it's 363 instead of 343, and then 626 is, what is the proper?
It should read 343 and 626.
Okay,
I think there was a typo in that bottom line, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
So
it's
the
343.
motion to approve should be to correct that typographical error also.
Okay.
Did you have a question too?
No.
That's just on the staff report. That wasn't in the actual title of the ordinance either.
It is.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm looking at
it's
the
on
ordinance.
my
So it's in there. It's in the ordinance.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Are you going to
Oh,
amend that to
right.
correct it?
Amend my motion to
How about the
approve.
first line of the text, though?
It's on the first line, right, on the
Yeah.
very first line.
Safer to amend. Do I have a second?
Sorry, Phil, you.
I amended it to
Yes.
include the revision, yes.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was a 5-0 vote. Number 10.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. This is the adoption of an urgency ordinance regulating small cell wireless telecommunication facilities. The background on this, in September 2018, the FCC issued a declaratory ruling and third report in order as part of their national strategy to promote the timely build-out of new 5G telecommunications infrastructure across the country, basically to limit the regulations and what they saw as impediments on this new technology, which is being rolled out by wireless carriers to be available to the public. In order to meet rapidly increasing demand for wireless service and prepare our national infrastructure for 5G, providers must deploy infrastructure at significantly more locations using small cell facilities. If you haven't seen some of these, they're not the traditional, we know what a cell phone tower is. We've got some on the airport, the rock pile, and that's just blasts out a giant signal. These are a little smaller, and they are intended to be on street lights, utility poles, and that sort of thing, and they have a smaller range, and they all talk to each other, and that's what keeps the connectivity going. So that's kind of the next wave of technology for wireless carriers. This initially was approved in a bill in the state legislature. SB 649 was approved by the California state legislature, but it was vetoed by Governor Brown after opposition from the League of California Cities. After that was done, the telecommunications companies went to the FCC, and that's where this declaratory ruling came down in September. It took us some time, and other municipalities some time, to figure out what this meant for us. League of California Cities, attorneys, trying to decipher what we could and couldn't do in terms of what local control we still have. A lot of the details are included in the staff report, but this is why we're sort of up against a deadline, which essentially is January 14th, next week, to establish our, at least, beginning of an ordinance to show what we can regulate. The issue being, there is now on top of the FCC's, part of the FCC's ruling, what they like to call shot clocks. And so should somebody come in for a permit, we have essentially 60 days to 90 days, depending on the type of permit, to rule on their permit request. But if we don't have anything on the books, we also can't treat a wireless carrier differently than any other utility. So it's sort of a tricky position for us to be in, trying to get this done in a short order and still be open to the new technology that the wireless carriers are rolling out. Now, currently, the City of Tehachapi zoning code addresses some telecommunications facilities, but it does not address the new 5G small cell wireless technology, and therefore requires the attached emergency ordinance and exhibits. The urgency ordinance addresses potential future projects within the city, ensuring that legal standards are met, and addresses any concerns in the permitting process that small cell wireless facilities present in the areas of public safety, disturbance of right-of-way, excessive size, noise, or visual aesthetic blight, which may be negative impacting the unique quality and character of the city. So there's also attached a few pictures, and some of these are good examples, I guess you can say. Some of these are not so much. Actually the first page showed some of the ones that you can barely tell. They sort of go into the light standard, and it's not terrible looking, but there are some as you go down, and folks in different parts of the country that didn't necessarily have any local control, it turns into a daisy chain effect, and one carrier, and then another carrier, and another carrier. So we worked with a legal team that has addressed these across the state to put together our proposed urgency ordinance to help regulate these should the need for permitting come very soon. And 5G, different experts say it's close, some say it's got some time still. The city of Bakersfield recently went through an urgency ordinance as well. They currently have 13 active permits with a third-party company. It's not even one of the telecommunications providers, the company who's building these things and then partnering with the telecommunications company. So you can also see some of the power cabinets and stuff that are included. So we went through this ordinance, and it addresses a lot of these potential issues, but it also keeps the door open to, and there's a lot of leeway inside this ordinance to allow us to continue to, maybe amend the language in the future with the zoning code adoption, or it gives the development services director some opportunities if they come back and said, I need more than 1,500 feet and you need to be within 300 feet of another cell. Here's why. We have that ability to open the dialogue. We just need, basically based on the FCC's declaratory ruling, we need something on the books by January 14th before potentially someone comes to the counter for a permit. So that is the background of all this. And the recommendation is that the city is supportive of new 5G technology relates to quality of life and the ability to conduct business in our community. We also understand the value of the public right-of-way, the valuable public resource, and it's also linked with the city's natural beauty and significant number of residential communities. So we encourage the adoption of the reasonably regulated and orderly deployment of wireless telecommunication facilities in the public right-of-way, and the unregulated and disorderly deployment represents an ever-increasing and true threat to health, welfare, and safety of the community. So therefore, to remain supportive of new technology in compliance with federal regulations that protect the health and welfare of the community, it's recommended the council adopt the urgency ordinance as it relates to small cell wireless telecommunication facilities. And we did receive a letter from AT&T today, which you have a copy of. There are some copies in the back available as well, essentially raising their concerns with this. And so I'll let you review that if you've not had the chance yet. And I'll answer any questions.
Any questions from the audience?
Are there any questions from the audience concerning this?
Forrester, City of Tehachapi. Do you all understand what he said? Because I sure as hell didn't. And you're gonna vote on it? Do you understand what he's saying?
Yes.
You all do understand
Yes.
what he's saying?
We got the packet Thursday night, and I've been studying it all since Thursday night. And I agree that technology, I'm the tech guy of my family, but it's the most hideous thing I've ever seen.
Right.
Well, no, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that y'all had a chance to look at this because all of a sudden it's an urgent vote again for the 14th of this month. And that you all had a chance to look over all of the information, ask all of your questions, and understand what you're voting on.
Yes, ma'am. I was on the phone today, speaking to different people, and like I said, I don't know what's worse, looking at that on a street pole or looking at one of those fake pine trees. But I'm all for technology improvements.
Yeah,
Some
I
of
am
those, I think
too.
that we would have some say-so on what we have in our neighborhoods, because there's gonna be 12 of them in my neighborhood if we go by the 500 foot. And I don't have any telephone poles, but I have street poles in my neighborhood, and I don't wanna be looking at those things.
We've also put things in this potential ordinance to allow to prioritize zones. So for example, if you live near a commercial zone, we prefer them be in a commercial zone and still maybe serve your home, but not be in front of your house. So that's been taken into consideration as well in the ordinance. So there is a sort of order of preference that we've included as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To answer your question again, though, this is an urgency ordinance not to allow them to go forward. It's allowing us time to see what we can do to regulate locally, have local control. So you're concerned that we've read this in 3 days and approving something. We're approving a stopgap measure so that we can all understand, like all the other cities in the state, what are we gonna be looking at with this technology? So the vote tonight is, okay, we're gonna get our marker down so that we do have a say. If we don't say or take any action tonight, then we would not have the say that we would lose our control.
Okay, I
So
appreciate
that's what
that.
that is for.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Council?
My concern is the same as yours and the audience. I do agree we need telecommunications. However, in my travels, I've been to cities where they have telecommunication wire systems and they are absolutely an eyesore. And that is my biggest concern, that they will go into the scenery rather than stick out like sore thumbs with wires all over the place that look like monstrosities.
That's addressed quite a bit in the ordinance in terms of screening. And not only the antenna itself, what you don't see in a lot of pictures and what's usually left out in presentations is the power required to power these things. And that's usually a pole mounted cabinet, a meter, electrical panel. And so our ordinance speaks to the screening, the landscaping. If you've got something that's ground mounted in a landscape area, landscaping around it to shield it out, those sort of things, as much as possible. And this is something it's consistent with our general plan and our zoning code as it stands now. So it's not like we're treating them any differently than any other utility. This is consistent with the general plan and what we've adopted in the past for all utilities that come in.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Since we did receive this letter from AT&T today, did we attempt to contact Christine Moore, or did she contact us to actually have a discussion?
Yes, I spoke with her today, yeah.
What were their concerns? I mean, I read what she wrote, but what did they expand any further from what the letter says regarding the issues that face them as a massive telecommunications company?
It was the same concerns they addressed, I think, when the city of Bakersfield did their urgency ordinance. Not specifically speaking to, we don't want to screen, we don't want to blend it in. It was more, they felt like this would be too prohibitive on them to make this technology available up here. And they also felt like this was the end-all be-all, and we reassured them that this is just a stopgap. This is just kind of get us a baseline, and then we can work with them. We encourage them especially as they continue on their projects in bigger cities, when they have a prototype or whatever available, bring it to us, let's take a look, and we'll see, and if it doesn't quite fit, we can make adjustments as the code allows to help make it fit, so we can get this technology, but do it appropriately, and that was their biggest concern, and they just felt like they didn't see this coming, so to speak, and they didn't speak specifically to one area of the code or not.
Okay, we did give them a reassurance that we have flexibility in the language to allow them to come in and provide the service that they do.
Yeah, and matter of fact, they, and that was the biggest point of the conversation was, yeah, please bring us something, and we'll definitely be willing to do that. And I know they had the same concerns in Bakersfield. I spoke with some city officials there, and they said they've actually made a couple changes to their ordinance since, and they've adopted some changes, and they had a prototype actually set up on a kind of a dummy pole just to see what it looked like, and based on that, they went back and made some changes. So, yeah, we basically said, we want to talk to you. We just need to make sure we're covered. It's not so much AT&T, but there are several other operators or third-party companies that could come in on January 15th if we don't have anything on the books. We could potentially violate the federal mandate because we'd be treating them differently than any other utility, which was the main decision from the FCC.
Okay, great, thank you. And I don't have any other questions, Madam Mayor.
And looking at a single receiver transmitter on one pole, one box, and you notice with cell towers, the cables are just inundating the towers now, and you've got 15, 20 antennas on a tower, so we could be looking at multiple boxes hanging from our streetlights. So that's, I think, just the aesthetics of it. We want to be able to have some control over that. And if it means that whoever gets there first gets first dibs on that neighborhood or what, there's got to be, I know you can't control competition in that way maybe, but the other thing is they're going to get their power from the nearest power pole and string a line. And some of our neighborhoods with all of our underground lighting systems, you don't see power poles with power going pole to pole like we do on wooden poles. So now we're talking they're going to have to underground it, which gets very expensive, or put it on a pole that's already got power. So I'm very interested in knowing how they're going to get power to these. And then you start cutting up our streets. Every time you make a cut in a street, it's very expensive. And 9 times out of 10, it looks smooth the first time they put asphalt on it, and after the winter, it's a dip. So there's going to be multiple cuts and things that we have to be considerate of, and that they would have to come back and make sure they're smooth. But any of those are some just... Yeah,
and this ordinance speaks to, especially the underground portion, if as long as we're not treating anything differently, so if their neighborhood that has underground power, then they need to continue with underground power. Right. And same with new utility poles and things of that nature. So it speaks to that, and really, like I mentioned before, not treating them any differently than any other utilities that we have. If we require underground, we continue to require underground for power for these things.
If they were to have to put an additional pole in a neighborhood that only has one block, it's got 2 poles with streetlights, is there going to be something where we would control what type of pole goes in? Is it going to blend? Is it going to be something where if they do add a pole, we can add a streetlight? Because some of our older neighborhoods are very dark. And this would give us an opportunity, okay, we can go with Southern Cal Edison. In addition to these providers, say, we're going to allow you to put a unit on a pole for 5G, but we also want we want a street light in the middle of the block. We got a lot of downtown streets that are very dark. They're just at the corners of the blocks. So it's just something I'm throwing out there. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Then I'll...
The motion would be to approve the ordinance by title only, and Mr. Costello's going to have to read the title again.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
He's going to read it first.
Here we go, I have the title. An emergency ordinance of the City of Tehachapi regarding wireless telecommunications facilities and amending the City of Tehachapi zoning code.
All right. Have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the ordinance.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded to approve by title only. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Let the record show it was a 5-0 vote. Thank you, Mr. Costello. Development Services Director reports.
Madam Mayor and council members, the first item I have before you is the approval of tentative parcel map number 12320. If you'll indulge me for a moment for the sake of the new council members, this is one of those areas that gets a little interesting to deal with because you guys have appointed a planning commissioner tonight and you have a planning commission. You've delegated certain authority over the development of things within the city too. And so this is not an abnormal activity for us in terms of perhaps a developer comes to us with an entire development package for a project that goes to the planning commission first for approval, but then some component of that development is you have not delegated authority to them to approve. And this is a good example of that. In this case, they wish to parcelize the land, and that requires general plan findings for consistency with the general plan, etc. And so the development has been fully approved by the Planning Commission. The appeal period is ended, and therefore the project that we're going to speak about tonight is fully approved. The parcel map itself, though, just the map to allow the land to go from the existing parcel arrangement it has to the proposed parcel arrangement, is the item before you tonight for a decision. So, with that as background, on December 10th of 2018, the Planning Commission approved 3 resolutions relating to this project. One certifying an environmental impact report, and a statement of overriding considerations for the Red Apple Pavilion development. Another for the architectural design and site plan review, and a 3rd resolution recommending approval of tentative parcel map 12320 to the City Council. So again, that is attached as Exhibit A, the tentative map. The subject site is located in the southwest corner of the intersection of Red Apple and Tucker Road. The assessor parcel numbers are listed in the staff report. As indicated in the exhibit, the application by Tehachapi Holdings LLC is to subdivide 13.94 acres of commercial land along Tucker Road and Route 202. The findings you're required to make tonight are pursuant to the Municipal Code Section 17-16070. First, that the proposed subdivision is consistent with the adopted general plan, and that the proposed subdivision complies with several sections of the California Government Code that are a housing element issue that doesn't apply in this case because it's commercial land, and an issue in the government code. This is stuff from the state of California that the site is considered passive and natural heating and cooling opportunities when laying out the development. So those are the items that you have tonight for you. I'm happy to, it's a fairly straightforward subdivision into 6 parcels. They have subdivided, I will say, for the benefit of the proposed development. The proposed development is a shopping center. It's been in the news, so hopefully you guys know about it. It includes several out parcels and then a bank of developed parcels along the back that would be built potentially in 2 phases, with the parcels immediately adjacent to Tucker building first and the remainder of it being built at a later time. But again, tonight the map is the subdivision. Staff finds that the findings are in order, and therefore pursuant to section 17-16060 of the Tehachapi Municipal Code, city staff and the City Planning Commission recommend approval of tentative parcel map number 12320. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Anyone in the audience have any questions before we approve this parcel map? Council?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This is for our council, legal counsel. The company I work for has been in contact with the owner of this property to might get involved with a gas station. Would that be any conflict with me? Okay, so I might as well just get it out there right now. I don't want to go through the motions and then.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. You'll have to recuse yourself on this.
Okay.
So the minutes should reflect that there's a potential conflict of interest because his company is talking to the developer about providing product or services, I suppose. It's not there yet, apparently.
Right.
But the fact that it's in the works, he potentially has a conflict of interest close enough, or I would say he needs to recuse himself, and it needs to show in the minutes, and then you would need to leave. Yeah.
Okay, I need to recuse myself, so I'll go back in my closet. I'll step out in the hallway.
There's a place to sit.
Any other comments or questions from the council?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I've been approached by numerous persons from our community, and that's both citizens of Tehachapi and also citizens of the outlying areas. Their concerns specifically regarding this particular project revolve around the congestion and the traffic. And I think what has caught some of our citizens off guard when they drive by the new Walmart and they see how massive that building is and the traffic and the congestion that will be a result of that business opening, they then looked at this plan and some of the activity associated with this new development and voiced their concerns to me regarding the congestion and the traffic. Will we, or has there been a full analysis of what a subdivision of this parcel will do from a business perspective on the other side as it relates to congestion and traffic issues? Because, you know, if it's all one, you can understand what that could potentially generate from a congestion or a traffic issue. When it gets subdivided into smaller businesses, it could potentially impact that. That's the concern that has come back to me from both citizens in town and those who use the Tucker Road corridor for commuting primarily. With the additional stoplights that are going in and now a new development, what have we done as a council to make sure that we understand those dynamics, and will this subdivision have any impact on that going forward? And I apologize, that's sort of a complicated question.
No, I think I've got an answer for you. The first I would start with, though, with all due respect, what you have done is you have appointed a planning commission to get educated on this subject and to make an educated decision. There was a public hearing. All residents within 300 feet received notification, and the newspaper advertised notification. And these types of questions actually weren't asked at the planning commission. There were a few questions asked of nearby residents about the impact to them. That would have been the appropriate time. So that is the first point. And so technically I need to advise you, you are not to allow those types of questions to influence whether this map is approvable or not approvable, because you delegated that authority to the planning commission. To answer the question though, we did a complete environmental impact report for this project, which included a very sizable, if size on this matters, sizable traffic study to consider the complete development and the impacts of the complete development upon congestion in that area. There are mitigation measures, as there were with the Walmart project, associated with that. Either the construction of, a good example was one of the fallouts was construction. When they build the second phase of the project, they're going to be required to construct a median on Red Apple to control some of the traffic activities in that area. I just give that to you as a for instance. And then they also have to pay fees for their fair share impact to a number of the intersections that are associated with the development of that project. So a complete, robust traffic study was done with mitigation measures attached to this project and were adopted and approved by the Planning Commission.
Since we were, since I was personally advised by our city attorney not to participate in those planning commission meetings in the past, I think as a community, we, in a case like this, and I mean, there's a lot of us that can remember when there was one flashing light out there at 202 and Tucker Road, a big oak tree and an old real estate office, and that was it. And then came, I think, Jack in the Box, and then came Save Mart, and then, then it expanded. The concern remains.
Oh, yes.
The concern remains, as a planning commission that takes input from the community, that then conveys that to the council. Did we adequately go out? And I understand we advertise in the newspaper and we do all the things that we're supposed to do. But I mean, Mr. Schlosser, can you just tell me off the top of your head, were there 5 people in the audience during that meeting? I mean, when I used to go to planning commissions, you'd be doing good to get 1 or 2 people in the audience. And we can't, I don't think, as a body, make decisions. Yeah, sure, the opportunity was there for people to comment, but I think as a council, we need to make absolutely sure that our community has been able to voice their concerns. We understand the impact that it may have on them as a council, not a planning commission, and make sure that we're doing the right thing. I'm not necessarily against this subdivision, but it's complicated, and Tucker Road is getting more complicated every day. I honestly don't know how we're going to resolve some of those issues in that area, but I'm not sure that we have received enough input on issues regarding congestion and traffic that allows us to make a good, valid decision tonight.
So we are a city, and we're promoting growth within the city. Now, we're not growing just to grow, we're growing with a purpose. Caltrans in the city, some 15 plus years ago, 20 years ago, quite frankly, worked on and created the Tucker Road corridor, State Highway 202. So it's a 4-lane state highway with currently a turning lane in the middle. The Walmart project and the project that we're talking about tonight, the Red Apple Pavilion, has been discussed in public for 10 plus years, 10 years. We have gathered lots of data. We have spent a lot of money. Developers have spent a lot of money. And the traffic mitigation that has been designed has been driven by the entire corridor. And when I mean the corridor, it's from Tehachapi Boulevard to Red Apple, south to Valley Boulevard. So once Walmart is built out, once Red Apple Pavilion is built out, there are only a couple parcels left. And the design of the traffic mitigation, the turn lanes, turn pockets, the signals that will be installed on Tucker and on Tehachapi Boulevard, and in the future, Red Apple, and in the future, some on Valley, will be put into place by either developers or money fees that have been contributed towards the city and the county's fund that was created jointly because we have been studying the entire region. We don't look at just pieces. We look at the piece of the pie, but we also look at the entire pie. So this is a very complex question, but people have a right to develop, and we have a right to control or regulate that based upon who we answer to. We all answer to the citizens of this great city, but also to the region. We understand that whatever decisions you make or what we recommend that you make will affect in a positive and sometimes negative way. Who knows? But retail is needed in the city, and we want that to take place in the city, because otherwise, last year over $200 million of retail spending dollars were spent outside of our city. And that means we all spent over $200 million somewhere else. We want to start capturing some of that revenue, that sales tax revenue, so that we can continue to provide a very high quality of life. Great policing, fire, code enforcement, partnering with the Parks District, Main Street, so on and so on and so on, right? It takes money to provide that service. So I'm not promoting necessarily retail, but what I'm saying is this has been a long journey, and tonight, as Jay put it forth in the very beginning, you delegated that authority to the Planning Commission. They've already approved it. The appeal process went through. Nobody appealed it. Most people want retail opportunities. Some, they would like us to stay a small town, but you can't stay a small town. You just can't. The only thing you can do is grow in the appropriate way. We spend a lot of time and a lot of money on our general plan, right? It's very progressive, and our zoning codes, and all of that is incorporated into the Walmart project. It's incorporated into the Red Apple Pavilion project, and everything that Jay and his outstanding team works on, including the Planning Commission when I say outstanding team. So this is a good thing, and we recommend that you certainly do approve this parceling of this almost 20 acres. It's similar to a neighborhood. When somebody comes to us and states we want to build 100 homes, for instance, each resident, each home is a separate and apart legal parcel. So that's what this developer intends to do. Some retailers will not lease space. They require ownership. Carl's Jr. and Panda Express, they've both been put out there as signing on to this project. Both of those companies require that they own the dirt, right? They won't lease. So this developer will only move forward if you approve. If you don't approve, I can guarantee you tomorrow morning, we will get a call from a lawyer, 43rd floor, downtown LA, and sue the city of Tehachapi. They have a right to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett, but I think as a council, we also have a right to look out for our citizens to ensure, I mean, your point on quality of life. You know, people live in Tehachapi, they move to Tehachapi, they enjoy our community of Tehachapi, and I say Tehachapi holistically, inside the city limits and outside. The last thing, and I can speak about commuting, because I did a lot of commuting over the years. The last thing you want to do as a person coming home from work is to get stuck in an area that's going to take another 10 or 15 minutes to get home after a long day at work. We've got people that are commuting down the hill, working in Shafter, working in the oil fields. You know, they come a long way. And those are the folks that raise their concern with me. And I'm going to come back to it again. It's the traffic and the congestion. You know, I am perfectly happy with a developer or a property owner coming in and doing what they need to do to build out what they own. That's not my concern. I am worried about whether or not we have, and I'm not double questioning or questioning the Planning Commission's decision, but as a council member that's going to vote on something that's going to impact this community, I need to understand. You know, Walmart, one of the big things that Walmart brought to the table, they told us how many vehicular movements were going to happen in a 24-hour period in that store. And I remember the number. It's a big number, folks. It was 11,000 car movements per day. So if you can measure 11,000 people, and that's an in and an out. So cut that in half, and that's the trips into Walmart. When we turn around and add that to that area where this development's going to occur, will it impact the quality of life of people in Tehachapi? And that question I don't have an answer to. I'd like to know, have we, in the analysis that the Planning Commission did, do we have an understanding of how many traffic movements will be generated from that type of subdivision or facility, a strip mall coming into that location? Do we have any idea? And I realize that that is sort of dependent on the type of business that shows up, but do we have any futuristic or foresight in what that number of vehicle movements will be? And do we add that now to the 11,000 that's going to happen across the street from that? You know, it will be, or it could potentially be, absolute gridlock.
To answer your question twofold, the action you're taking tonight will have zero impact on traffic. You're approving a tentative parcel map. The development of the project does have in that traffic study, has identified, I didn't bring it with me tonight because you're not looking at it, but it has identified the predicted trip generation for the development of that project. There are ways to predict it for a shopping center, not knowing what each or who each tenant is. Those same predictive measurements were used with Walmart. In fact, it's the very same consultant that did the traffic study for Walmart that did the traffic study for this development. Will there be increased congestion on Tucker Road in the coming years? Yes, there will be. I've been very plain with this council and the public on that. That's a reality with Walmart. With this development, would contribute additional trips to Tucker Road. It is the nature of growing pains. But we enjoy here, and this is always the tough part when it comes to this very subject, is we enjoy here very high levels of service. That's a term engineers use for determining the free flow movement of vehicles on roads. We enjoy an abnormally high level of service that is not the norm in any place or space that you go. And If you wish to maintain that level of service, you are effectively, as a council, from a policy perspective, attempting to eliminate all growth in this community. That's just a plain fact. If you don't ever want there to be more cars on the road that influence whether you get from point A to point B faster or slower, then you're saying nothing can change. That is not the direction the council has given us in the generation of the general plan of the zoning code. And more importantly, Greg, I think it arrives on a really important point, Councilmember Hecky, is that property owners have rights. He has gone through, you're very big at talking to us as staff and as the rest of the council in the past 2 years about dotting our I's and crossing our T's, doing what the rules tell us we should be doing. And we followed that procedure, and the Planning Commission made a decision. The Planning Commission you all appointed for that purpose. So for us to attach to this approval of a parcel map an issue that you have already delegated to the Planning Commission is inappropriate, in my opinion. It just is what it is. You have done your job as a council. You've asked the Planning Commission to tackle problems like this and to make a decision, and they made a decision. So I don't think that's going to assuage your concerns about traffic, but that's the process. That's what we're facing here tonight.
Just so everyone understands, when you say this has been delegated to the Planning Commission, they're just not sitting in a room by themselves. They have our entire staff, all the engineering documents, the environmental impact report that was done on this. This wasn't just a minor document for environmental. This was a full-blown environmental impact report, which is not a very, it's not a cheap thing to do. It has to be done. Walmart had to do it. They had to hire the same consultants that Walmart used. I forget how many signals are going to be added to that area. There's going to be one across from on Tehachapi Boulevard. There's going to be 2 on Tucker, correct?
2, that's correct.
And there could be additional as it relates to this, or this is those will handle this one as well.
Correct.
Correct. That's what I read. So as far as flow, that's why you have synchronization of signals, so that when you're traveling on 178 in Bakersfield, you're 35 miles an hour, you tend to hit the signals correctly. So we should be able to adopt that kind of thing. You're not going to take 10, 15 minutes to get from Tehachapi Boulevard to Valley Boulevard. But just so everyone's aware, this has been in the works 15, 20 years. This didn't happen last year when the Planning Commission approved this. So all the studies have been done. All the traffic mitigation has been done. Sound mitigation has been done. The documents are out there for anybody to review that. And when you have those added traffic counts, they have to spend their dollars to mitigate it. Taxpayers here in the city do not have to mitigate that. We do not spend our tax dollars doing that. They have to do that, correct?
Correct.
So, and if they have done that as a property owner, they have done everything required. We must vote yes on this, so that would be something I would just put out there. So anyway.
Anything else, Mr. Hecky?
No, Madam Mayor.
Do you have any questions?
It's kind of it's a question anyway. Do we have any idea of what businesses are going in there? I have a concern that, we might have vacant properties like we've had in the past, and that's a concern for me. And maybe the city as well, so it's not an eyesore. You mentioned Carl's Jr. and Panda Express.
Yep.
Jay?
Yeah. The answer to that question is the applicant is proposing a 2-phase project. The first phase consists of 4 lots that are immediately adjacent to Tucker Road. Those 4 have been proposed. The corner lot has been proposed either as like a drugstore or a gas station. Both of those options were approved by the Planning Commission. The next lot running south is proposed to be a Carl's Jr. The third lot is currently unassigned. They proposed a building that was approved from an architectural standpoint by the Planning Commission, but without a tenant identified to us. And the 4th lot is identified as a Panda Express. All of the lots along the back, the larger bank of buildings that's proposed, no tenant has been proposed to us at this date. I can assure you, though, that's a very expensive thing to develop. That applicant will not be building out land unless they have the tenants to fill it and to make it a viable project. It would be monetary suicide. And anyway, we've been dealing with this developer for 2.5 years now. We've been working through this process. They've been actively talking to different applicants. They have not managed to identify enough tenants to make the second phase viable, at least based on what they told us, which is not a guarantee of the truth. They're not obligated to promise me that data. I foresee, if you want my, is that they'll move forward with construction of phase 1 here within the year, and that we'll see a pause for a period of time to see the influence on the local economy of Walmart and the influence on the local economy of the developments they believe they have secured for the development. And then, you know, if there is some pent-up additional demand for additional buildings, then we would see them move forward. So could be years, could be never, could be 18 months from now. You know, the economy plays such a powerful role in whether developments move forward. So they've wisely sort of staged this so they can do it in pieces. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I actually have another question. Do we have a provision within the subdivision process to where if their phase 1 project is completed in its entirety, do we have anything in our code or ordinance that requires a developer to manicure, dress, whatever word you want to use, adjacent property so that we don't have a situation similar to where the Tractor Supply area is? That looks horrific. It's not Tractor Supply, and please don't anybody think that I'm talking disparagingly about Tractor Supply. That's not theirs. It's the lots that are adjacent to Tractor Supply that, from what I understand, were split out by that developer. And, you know, the fences are broken down, the tumbleweeds are, you know, hip deep. It's just not good. So do we have a process, if we go forward with a subdivision, to ensure that phase 1 gets built out, phase 2 is on the back burner until they have people to occupy those buildings? Is there something that we can assure the public of that says you will keep that at a certain level and not have to call, you know, code enforcement out to, you know, hang a note on the door and tell them to clean up their tumbleweeds?
To answer that question in twofold, I've probably been dilatory in my duties. There is a provision with the Tractor Supply project for them to maintain that landscaping and fencing. I've been dilatory in the sense that I've not contacted code enforcement and told them to go deal with it. That is the recourse, by the way. We have done a similar thing with this project, which is we have conditioned them to construct phase 1 as if it might be the only thing that ever occurs out there. And so it needs to stand alone from a landscaping, from a layout, from a paving perspective, so that it can exist in perpetuity by itself and not be an eyesore. The remainder lot, the way they've laid this out, is phase 2, and we've also conditioned them that if they disturb any of that land in the process of constructing phase 1, they have to rehabilitate the vegetation to put it back into a reasonably natural state. So yes, we have considered those issues. We did condition the developer to try to control against some of those problems. It's not a perfect solution, it never is, because you have a Tractor Supply situation, the guy just doesn't do it. And then you have to send out code enforcement. That's the nature of the business we're in. But we have made, I think, a reasonable attempt to cover that problem.
Okay, great, thank you, Mr. Schlosser.
And I would add too that with the new signals on Tucker, there's going to be median, so that it's going to actually be a safer movement as you're coming out of some of the businesses there. You can I go, and you lay on it, try to get into the turn lane. So it's going to be safer in the respect that you'll have signals, allow you to get out with a signal and with a median to protect. So I think it's going to be a better flow of traffic than it is right now. It's kind of a free-for-all through there. So we've all been through that.
Yeah, we had extensive conversation with both Caltrans and this developer about that. You know, the developer wanted extra driveways and crossings for that median. They didn't really want to have to pay to connect their site to the signal at Walmart, at least in the first phase, because that necessitated some additional expense. We held the line. We worked with Caltrans. Their signal is their main entrance will line up with Walmart's main entrance, which should help assuage. You won't get another signal. You won't get another crossing point. You know, but if you have more cars moving through that intersection, obviously it takes everyone a little longer to get through it. So that's my point about there will be some congestion. But for instance, they tried really hard to have a second median break north of the Walmart signal, and both Caltrans and us kind of said, look, that's not safe, and that's not something we're going to support, and ultimately they acquiesced. So, you know, that's a natural part of the 2.5 years we spent on this, is trying to find the best solution. But anyway, I think you guys are going to be pleased with it. I think architecturally it's attractive, and anyway, you know, I think we've done a good job of getting it to this point.
Are there any other questions from council?
No, ma'am.
Then I will entertain a motion to approve tentative parcel map number 12320. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Hi, am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah, I need you to come to the podium.
I just want to know if I could ask a question.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Susan Tintori. I live in the city. I agree with everything you've said. Very eloquent. I understand your position. You're appointed to do a certain job and you've done it. What I'd like to know is, you said this has been in the works for 10 to 15 years.
A long time.
When and how did Walmart fit into this time span?
Gosh, it's been years on that one too.
Because if you've been working, this is how I'm looking at, if you've been working on this, entertaining this for 10 to 15 years, but along comes Walmart, let's say 5 years ago or whatever.
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
10.
But did you not foresee that this is going to radically change the geography of that intersection and going towards, did you not, and you thought that that would be okay?
Well, the answer to that is Walmart was first.
Okay.
The city and Caltrans worked cohesively together to design and build the Tucker Road corridor, right? The area between Tehachapi, Boulevard, Red Apple, and Valley, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was all designed and master planned. Walmart was first, but the property that we're talking about tonight was annexed into the city and zoned commercial many years ago. So we knew, 1996. So we knew that somebody would come to the city and ask permission to do something like we're talking about tonight. So it was all known, and we've been working together with everybody to bring it all together. There was no unknowns.
I understand what you're saying, I really do. But to me, it's like two air traffic control operators going, well, he's okay to land, and he's okay to land too. And everybody in the middle, well, you're all going to have to wait in line. The other thing I want to say is you're kind of missing the point with the small town atmosphere of Tehachapi, which is one of the reasons I moved here. Most of Tehachapi now is becoming a retiree, older citizens, and maybe they don't all want this to be a great big burgeoning city like you want it to be. So as council members and people in charge, I would ask you to also pay attention to the peasants that have to go to work, that have to go down that corridor and get on the freeways, and maybe come home from work and they have to get someplace specifically, but now they can't. Because traffic is unpredictable. There's accidents, there's all sorts of things. So thank you for answering my question.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole. We currently reside out in the beautiful Oak Knolls, and we are newly back to Tehachapi. We lived here before. One of the things I want to thank you, Greg, for sharing the over $200 million that is being spent outside our precious city. Like, that makes me sick to think that we are going down the mountain to Bakersfield or over to Lancaster to buy all the things that we can't access here. So that's Christmas presents, birthday presents, food, soccer cleats for my son, swim goggles, I mean, all the things. So what I'm saying is, if we think traffic's gonna get bad in Tehachapi, are we not driving to Bakersfield where it's horrid, or Lancaster or Palmdale where it's horrid? I mean, like, I think we're missing some of the points of cities change, they grow, and I'm not retired, and I'm raising my amazing family here, and I want the benefits of that city. I'm not saying we bring in every retailer and every store, but don't kid yourself if you're not going down the hill to go shopping.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments?
My name's George Sandy. Lived in the town here since '88. And Obviously, I love this town or I wouldn't stick around. But I have to apologize for not taking the time to attend some of the planning commission discussions on this subject. So you can wrap me if you want. But what I want to do is just ask about the Tucker corridor. There is going to be a very intense, crowded traffic corridor. We all seem to agree on that. But leading away from that very crowded area are only 2-lane roads. Apple, 202 in both directions, and even Tehachapi Boulevard. And I was just wondering if in the planning, and I'm trying to play catch up here, was there any discussion about opening up these so-called arteries, especially 202, which is a state highway? So that's the question I have. And maybe somebody can tell me.
The answer to that question is yes. We're constantly having conversations with Kern County or with Caltrans about overall traffic circulation. That's one of my jobs at the city as the city engineer, is to keep an eye on that. However, the only one you listed on that list that's within the city's jurisdiction is Tehachapi Boulevard, which I can assure you we have been considering, closing the gaps in the 2-lane section of Tehachapi Boulevard, although the traffic studies don't show, they show that the vast majority of traffic coming to these new developments is not coming down Tehachapi Boulevard. The vast majority of it is coming from Golden Hills or from Bear Valley and Stallion Springs, where frankly a greater percentage of the area's population lives, so there's some logic to that. We've had a couple of recent conversations about the widening of 202 with Caltrans. Quite frankly, Caltrans and the County of Kern do this when I sit in a meeting with them, both pointing at each other as responsible for solving that problem. I would encourage anybody who's interested, who drives that route on a regular basis, to speak to your representatives at the county or at Caltrans about your concerns if you have them. To answer your question, traffic analysis, but again, I come back to level of service. That's the only thing I can offer people. I do not believe Tucker Road is going to become a massively congested corridor. I would not agree with that statement that you made at the beginning. Will there be increased congestion? Yes. With more signal lights, will it typically take you a minute or two longer to cover that mile distance? Yes, I think that's a reasonable conclusion to draw from this. But that is, again, the nature of having additional cars traveling on the road, all for different purposes. So anyway, I would not characterize this as likely to be massive congestion or heavy congestion. There will be increase in it. We enjoy just, I live out in the county too. I hardly have to stop when I'm traveling 3 or 4 miles. That's going to change. There are going to be times when you have to stop from time to time. But again, that would not be the way I would characterize this issue. So maybe that's helpful to everybody. Maybe that just continues your disappointment. But anyway, I hope that's helpful.
I agree. We have to amend our concepts and desires in the face of all this progress in this little town. If nothing else, on these auxiliary streets or access streets to the Grand Tucker concept, perhaps the city on its own could provide very good lighting, especially on 202, where we've had a lot of serious accidents. It's narrow, it goes up and down, and the other streets perhaps too could take some better lighting. But that could be perhaps thrown into the mix at nominal cost compared to this overall project. But I'd recommend the lighting if nothing else. And I thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from
Just a comment.
Oh, sorry.
Ma'am that spoke, I have to agree with you, and I agree with Councilman Hickey with I wish we could have kept Tehachapi a small town the way we were, but we've also heard people who want to shop locally. Here's my story I say every couple of years. In high school, I used to take care of, there's a barn out off of 202 and 10 acres. The shopping center, or there's a, who's that actress?
Reynolds,
Debbie Reynolds Plaza and all that. None of that was there. Golden Hills was just roads, it wasn't houses yet. And going out there on a winter day, I slid off the road to go feed the horses for my boss. And it was about dusk, and I was hoping that everyone wasn't home yet, that I was gonna get someone to tow me out of the ditch. Because that time of day, it's snowing, everyone's where they're supposed to be. And now we got 20-some thousand trips per day of all the folks who moved into Golden Hills, all the folks who moved into Stallion and Bear Valley out in the county. So years and years ago, we established Tucker Corridor as where we would concentrate all the volume of traffic and businesses, so that here in the older part of town, we can still have quiet, smaller roads, smaller, quieter neighborhoods. So that's why you see a lot of that was developed out there. And there was a lot of forethought into that. I'm just throwing it out. I agree with you, but a neighbor finally came out and pulled me out of the ditch, and I was able to feed the horses. So anyway, that's my story.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion to approve tentative parcel map number 12320.
I make a motion on staff's recommendation to approve.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the tentative parcel map as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a comment before I place my vote. We must have the community participate in the planning that goes on in our community. We have got to get more than 1 or 2 or 3 people that come to the Planning Commission. We have got to have people start understanding what is being printed in that micro print in the back of the newspaper. The people in this community must start participating in the very government that is going to impact them in the future. If you don't participate in that, and I have to agree with Mr. Schlosser, we delegate the authority to make the decision to our Planning Commission. That's the delegation. If those questions aren't asked at that point, if the people that have concerns don't voice them at that point, then we are now left at the position that we're currently in. So on that note, I urge our community to become more active in participating in what goes on here. And with that, I vote in support of. So it's a yes.
Thank you. Let the record show it was a 4-0 vote. We will invite Mr. Davies back to the room.
He's out there napping.
Yeah, he went for a hamburger.
Number 12, Mr. Schlosser.
Honorable Mayor and council members, the second item I have for you tonight is the Capitol Hill Specific Plan revised. There was an original Capitol Hill Specific Plan adopted on May 15, 1989 in compliance with the adopted general plan that existed at that time. That general plan has been updated twice, well, updated once and completely rewritten the second time in 2012, the general plan, which governs the overall plan of the city of Tehachapi. The plan proposed, this is speaking the old one, proposed residential, commercial, industrial zones of varying intensities and mixtures, as well as circulation street sections. In the 29 years since that original plan was adopted, again, we've undergone some major changes to the planning, the overall planning horizon of the city. I might note that this is an example contrary to the one we just did. The original plan for Capitol Hills, proposed a metropolis north of Highway 58 near the Capitol Hills area. Literally, the concept drawings have high-rise buildings in them. Since that time, our new general plan in 2012 kind of highlighted our desire to allow growth, but yet to do our best to maintain a small town character, a small mountain town character. And so it became kind of obvious at that point that the Capitol Hill specific plan was no longer even remotely close to in alignment with that general plan. Subsequent to that, so we began the preparation of an updated Capitol Hill specific plan, the Capitol Hill specific plan revised, to implement the physical outcomes of the 2012 general plan for the area known as Capitol Hills. So as a reminder to everybody, Capitol Hills is the area north of Highway 58, roughly between Capitol Hills Parkway or Mill Street and Denison Road. It does not include the areas where the hospital currently is that already sort of have roads developed. It is all of the undeveloped land that is in that rough region leading up to the base, or up into the hills actually, there north of Highway 58. The subject site of the general plan covers 1,918 acres north of Challenger Drive. The assessor's parcel numbers are there in your staff report. I won't read them. And then on December 10th, the City of Tehachapi Planning Commission recommended the adoption of the Capitol Hill specific plan by ordinance to the City Council. I'm not gonna, unless you guys ask me to, I was not planning to provide a detailed, the document is attached in your packet. It's extensive. It includes, let me maybe just, these aren't gonna come to you guys very often. This is not, I mean, the city has a total of 2 specific plans. Largely, the general plan in the City of Tehachapi identifies areas where they are significantly either distant enough from the core of the community or large enough relative to the size of the community that basically they're designated as needing further planning in order to create a vision for the development of that area. So in 2012, the general plan said that, hey, the old Capitol Hill specific plan is no good anymore, and this region needs a new plan. But did not, for the sake of, frankly, money, and there was a lack of need to do that at that time, did not attempt to produce the planning for that area. So all of the components that you see in the document are state-mandated components that go into an adoptable specific plan. The state has regulations. The Office of Planning and Resource requires that we include certain things in the specific plan. In short, the intent of the specific plan is to do what the zoning code has done for the city, which is to lay out a concept circulation for the roadways and paths that might serve that area, and then to lay out zoning for all the land in between those roads so that you can envision what a community might end up developing in that area to be. So then there are quite a few other requirements that as part of that plan, including a discussion of funding, which is in this case kind of superfluous because there is not a I should probably make this really clear. There is not a developer waiting in the wings to develop this property. This was not developer initiated, this was city initiated, so that we're prepared for the development of that land and also prepared for the potential high-speed rail to impact that property, which looks less and less likely now that you read the current news. Anyway, it also includes, for instance, an oak tree preservation plan, because a lot of that land is includes mountain series. It includes slope development standards, so you can only build on lots that are so flat, and once you start getting into the hills, it preserves much of this acreage as open space so that it will never become development. That's probably one of the great benefits of this project is that it will solidify that mountain area as staying natural. Effectively, there are some limited uses you can use in there, but it'll never be a subdivision or never be commercial or industrial development. And so I think maybe that's probably a good place to stop. The Planning Commission has reviewed this in detail. In fact, we had 2 meetings on this subject. We did receive public commentary on this item as we were going through it, and staff received quite a few questions from the planning commissioners, which is their job. They're supposed to spend the time reading this. And to go through and try to refine this to the greatest degree possible. So with that, tonight is only an introduction because we are asking you to adopt this by ordinance. Just to give you a quick summary of that, we spoke with the city attorney about you may adopt this by resolution or by ordinance. The primary difference between the two is that if it's only by resolution, then it's not enforceable from a civil perspective or a criminal perspective. So When we informed the city attorney, particularly the oak tree preservation component of it, he recommended an ordinance so that if somebody goes and cuts an oak tree down in against that ordinance, then we would have the ability to address that issue legally. Whereas if it's a resolution, we just get to kind of wag our finger at them. So, however, an ordinance requires both an introduction, which is what we're doing tonight, and then in a subsequent meeting, an adoption, a read and adoption of it. So, so no need for action tonight, other than to
You have to introduce it.
you have to introduce it, I guess is the action. So my recommendation is you introduce an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Tehachapi adopting the Capitol Hill specific plan revised and adding 6.20.170 to the Tehachapi zoning code. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from the audience? Council?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I just have one question, and you actually hit on it to a certain extent, Jay. How does this plan, or how is the plan impacted by the high-speed rail should that come to fruition? And we already know sort of, or tentatively, where that track will run through that area, comes out up behind the hospital, through a tunnel, blah, 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 blah. It sort of changes a little bit here and there, but will we end up having to come back to this plan in the future should the high-speed rail, dissect the property to where it changes the dynamics of what we approve in the future?
Page 119 of the PDF, if you guys can go there, I can help answer this question. Not the numbering based on mine, but the numbering based on the packet.
Yeah, up there. Page 4-4 on those maps.
5 pages further, actually. Okay, this is the proposed circulation plan for the development. So if you'll scroll down just a little bit so people can see it, you'll see that it's basically taken the extension of Capitol Hills Parkway and drawn it through the property to the northeast, and then it's taken some of the existing circular roads like Challenger Drive along the bottom, and it's tried to pull some of these pieces together into some semblance of a neighborhood that meets the general plan's ideas, which requires highly connected neighborhoods, and then yet retain sort of a residential nature. This is likely to end up sort of as a residential use, largely. If you go to the very next page, Ashley, the plan produced 2 versions, effectively, of all of the regulating documents. This is a version of the plan with high-speed rail cutting through the middle of it. So it's seen there in gray, it's labeled high-speed rail, and it looks at how we might produce circulation and zoning, and they're a little different from each other in each version. For instance, because if the high-speed rail exists, we're not going to want as much residential, or especially low-density residential like estate and single-family homes, to be immediately adjacent to the railroad tracks, because it devalues those properties. And instead changes a little bit of the zoning, and it sort of puts some of the more urban uses, for lack of a better term, on the southwest side of the tracks, and a purely suburban piece with no commercial on the other side of the tracks, because the tracks create limited mobility from one side of the tracks to the other. It's not that there isn't mobility, it's just limited. And so we wouldn't want to put a Costco up on the northeast side of the tracks where there's only 1 or 2 roads crossing the tracks to get there. So that's what we plan for, both eventualities. So the answer to your question is yes, we have absolutely considered what we would do with and without high-speed rail. And quite frankly, the way this happens is when somebody comes to develop, if high-speed rail exists before they come to develop, then we work on the regulating plan that includes high-speed rail, and if it goes the other way, then high-speed rail is going to have to figure it out when they come into town. It'll be a condition of their development to correct any issues they create. So, I hope that answers your question.
It sure did. Great. Thank you, Jay.
Any other questions from the council?
No.
Then I will entertain a motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance adopting the Capitol Hills specific plan. What?
Nothing, I'm sorry, I was talking to
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said don't vote on it. I didn't know.
Oh, no.
Okay. All right, I need a motion.
Go ahead.
Motion on staff's recommendation to introduce.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it was a 5-0 vote. City Attorney report.
Picking up from last.
Mr. Schroeder, before you introduce the next agenda item, I would like to indicate that I have a business at the Tehachapi Municipal Airport. I must remove myself via recusal for any discussions pertaining to this issue going forward. So please give me 10 seconds to get out the door. I'll go pick up the warm spot that Mike left out there.
There you go.
And the minutes should reflect that. We'll just pick up from the last meeting, actually from Mr. Hecke's comment. The nature of his potential conflict could drastically affect the taxiway relocation. So we've gotten an opinion from Richards, Watson, and Gershon that Mr. Hecke's conflict would rise to the level of a 1090 conflict, but that what's called the rule of necessity would allow us to vote on it. If the rule of necessity doesn't apply, you won't be able to vote on the taxiway relocation. So what we're doing tonight is we're asking, at the last meeting, Mr. Heckey had asked us to file a request with the FPPC about this on his behalf. He has decided now that he can't do that, and I can understand why he would make that comment. He's had his own legal advice that it's better for him not to participate at this point. And so, but the city needs that opinion. And so I'm asking for approval from the city council for me to ask for the FPPC to present a legal opinion on his conflict on behalf of the city.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the audience? Council?
No.
Then,
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Has there been any other airport tenant having this sort of a problem with the relocation?
Well, the only problem is the fact that Mr. Hepke, Councilman Hepke, is a member of the city council. That creates a potential conflict of interest.
Well, I'm not talking about the conflict. I'm talking about his...
Well, we're not here talking about the taxiway. We're only talking about getting an opinion from the Fair Political Practices Commission on the conflict.
Point is well taken.
All right. Do I have a motion to authorize the city attorney to request a formal advice letter from the FPPC?
A motion to grant,
Motion to authorize,
to authorize the letter written to the FPPC.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was a 4-0 vote. All right. City manager's report.
You're on a roll, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Wiggins. We've had some great things happen at the city in the last several weeks I wanted to share with the council and the public. First, I want to start with 0 time lost incidents. This is the second year that we have enjoyed a 0 lost time. So that means nobody at the city of Tehachapi has been harmed or hurt in the course of their duties, whether it's police department, public works, office staff, so on and so forth. That is a big, big deal. We've talked about this a couple times. 2017 was the first year in our history. 2017 is the second year running. That saves on insurance costs, taxpayer money, but most importantly, our employees are taking safety serious, right? Tyler Napier is our safety officer. He's done a tremendous job working with our department heads and our employees to make sure that everybody works as safe as they can, implementing safety programs, just on and on and on. So I want to send a big thank you and kudos to our entire workforce. They have done an amazing job. So thank you to everybody that worked in this. That's a big deal. Moving on, employee certifications and qualifications in 2018. I'm just going to read these achievements. We have several employees that have been furthering their education, getting new licenses and certificates and so on and so forth. Our assistant engineer, Andrew Norton, has successfully passed his engineering exam. So he has an engineering degree from an accredited college, but he went on to become a certified or licensed engineer. Jay is the only licensed engineer that I know of, actually. Many engineers out there, not to say that they're not qualified, but it takes a significant amount of effort to become a certified or licensed engineer. So Andrew Norton did that on his own successfully. There are 3 tests, Jay? 3 tests that are many hours long, and so he successfully completed that on his first try, I might add. So congratulations to Andrew Norton for passing that. Our planner, Trevor Hawks, successfully passed his AICP certified planner exam. Equally as important. Andrew comes to us from Arizona State University, and where did I say that wrong? I did it.
Andrew.
I'm sorry, Trevor,
Arizona State
ASU,
Masters, yeah.
the Masters, and he went on and successfully pursued his planning certification. So we have great people working at the city in Jay's department, specifically with the last 2, so congratulations to Andrew and Trevor for that. Also Jason Wyatt, he works for Jay also in our Public Works Inspection arm. So everything that is built in the city of Tehachapi that the public will eventually own, right? Sewer lines, water lines, asphalt, curb, gutter, sidewalks, signals, on and on and on. He recently passed his CP2 exam, Certified Public Infrastructure Inspector, and he's the only one that I know of that has that license. And Jay and I have been in this business for 15 plus years. So big thank you and congratulations to Jason Wyatt for that. Cynthia Davis. Cynthia works for Ashley in the front office. She recently earned her bilingual certification in Spanish, right? So we have the ability in City Hall now to communicate with our Spanish-speaking citizens, right? We have a lot of single language citizens, and they only speak Spanish. And so we've recently identified and reached out, and Cynthia took the course at Victorville College, I believe, earned her certificate, so kudos to Cynthia. It has been amazing. We are now seeing a lot more people coming into City Hall, talking to us about all kinds of things, whether it's passports or agendas, or how do I do this, or what should I do here. It's communications central, right? So we're really proud of Cynthia for earning her certification. Corey Costello recently earned his Economic Development certification through CALED, California Economic Development Corporation. So they're a nonprofit corporation that works through the state of California. He's been taking several courses. We went to about a 1-week seminar, not seminar, what would you call it?
It was kind of a crash course.
Crash course.
It wasn't as hard as the engineering test, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I got off easy.
But in economic development, obviously economic development is very important. As a matter of fact, as a little side note, Corey and I are going out to Edwards Air Force Base on Thursday for a day-long economic development. How can we work better together with the military and the city of Tehachapi? So we're looking forward to that. But congratulations to Corey for the CalEd certification. Also, coffee with the mayor and city manager. It's been going so well. I would invite everybody to that event. We have people coming in that have complaints, they have concerns, they have questions about what are we doing here, they have support. It's just all around a really good event. And we're seeing a lot of people that are participating in that. So I think last month there were 40 or more people that attended the 2.5-hour event. So thank you to the mayor and everybody else that shows up with the Coffee with the Mayor. Again, it's at the Coffee Mill, the third Thursday of every month, starting at 7:30 in the morning. We usually leave about 9:30, so 7:30 to 9:30. And then the city of Tehachapi recently received 2 awards from Kern Cog. Kern Cog is Kern Council of Government. And these 2 awards are, I think, the perfect example of who we are and what we do. The first award was to Police Chief Kent Krager. He's won the Richard A. Maxwell Regional Award of Merit for Public Safety for the Tehachapi Police Department Innovation and Resources Investigative Practices in 2018. What that means is we have empowered our police officers to also be detectives, right? Because we don't have the resources to have lots of police officers, lots of detectives, lots of sergeants, and so on and so forth. Our police officers have been empowered, when it's appropriate, to investigate crimes. And they have been doing that successfully, very successfully for the last couple of years. We're very proud of that. And Chief Krager and the police department were recognized for that achievement. So good job, Chief. You know, we talk about quality of life in Tehachapi, in a small town, and growing, right? But if you don't have public safety, if you don't have code enforcement, if you don't have officers out there helping with good leaders, then you'll lose it, right? And there are too many towns around us that have lost their way, and we're not losing our way. So thank you, Chief. The second award is to Key Budge, actually, for our community video series, spearheaded by Mr. Budge, the Regional Award of Merit for Journalism, for our community video series and the most engaged content on social media among all the cities in Kern County. We have more social media followers than all the cities, including Bakersfield, in Kern County, right? This is another tool that we're using to reach out to our citizens, to the people that live and work here that we serve, to help them better understand who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it. The discussion, the debate, and the decisions, right? You might not always like the decisions, but you can be better informed. You might not be able to come to this meeting, but you're going to get a video potentially on the items that we talk about. So we're very, very excited about Key, and thank you very much for your leadership. And a special thank you to the Police Foundation as Kim just left. So Kim Nixon, she's on the Police Foundation board. I want to thank her personally. I will tomorrow. But another successful event, the Shop with the Cop. Kmart opened their doors. Lots of contributions financially. We had several underserved or underprivileged children that we were able to help them purchase some Christmas gifts at Shop with the Cop. It's, how many years? Is this the 3rd year in a row?
I believe we're at 5.
5 years. So, very successful event. And so we thank the foundation for their participation and their leadership in the Shop with the Cop. And then we have our 2018 report coming soon. So we initiated a annual report some 6 years ago. And so we're putting the final touches on our 2018 report. And I'm going to be hitting the road. Rotary, Kiwanis, Associated Realtors, EDC, Economic Development, Tourism, so on and so forth. My schedule's booked in the month of February. So I would ask you to come out and learn a little more about what we did in 18 and some of our challenges, but also some of our achievements that we achieved as an entire group of individuals. So thank you very much for the time.
Wow, thank you.
And those awards will be presented in March, I think, right?
The Kern Cog Award ceremony is in March, correct.
So that's when they'll receive it. So.
Correct.
Okay, I'll talk to everybody and then come back to you.
Sure.
Do you have anything to add or report?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Smith?
I'm good.
Indeed.
I do. I want to thank the Public Works for the beautiful Christmas decorations that we had. I had several comments from friends and family, how cute it was, but they did a great job this year. It was beautiful. And then I've also had a few comments on the potholes, and there are several that need repaired desperately, but I understand that the truck or the machine was out of commission for a while, so, yeah, so that's a concern, so thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question.
And do the folks know that they can report those potholes online? And the staff will put a ticket in and do that?
No, I will tell them.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
On our attachment website, correct?
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's
As a
good
service.
information to know.
And
Just
street
to
lights.
pass along.
And
as
street
well.
lights,
Thank
if
you.
they're out. Okay,
And
Mayor.
street lights, okay, thank you.
Number, oh,
Great.
I'm sorry.
He's got one, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Councilman Hickey. I had a comment today regarding the park and ride. Wanted to know if we had a date when it was going to open. And one of the other concerns I had was there going to be a covered shelter.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find that out for one of my constituents.
As for the shelters, yes, they're scheduled 1 or 2 weeks from now. I don't have the exact date. Our partner in the development of the project is Kern Regional Transit. They are supplying the shelters at no cost to the taxpayers of Tehachapi. But that means we also have to coordinate with them to get them installed. So I'm working on that, but I've been told mid-January. And then as far as an opening date, I'm pushing for sometime this week potentially, but please don't print that because I don't have that. We're on the punch list at this point with the contractor, which means we're down to the last few details, and we are entitled to take ownership of the project prior to full completion, but it's always sort of a negotiation. If he needs to restripe something in the parking lot, we don't want to let a bunch of cars in there that keeps him from doing that. So I'm trying to nail down those last few details, but we're very close. So.
Thank you, Jay.
I'd like to add one thing to that, if I may. It's parking lot relevant, and that is the police department parking lot. Because of the bad weather, and we don't want to end up with a substandard asphalt parking lot, we have agreed to allow the contractor to go on hiatus for a bit of time until spring is knocking on our door, quite frankly, because we do need nice warm weather for asphalt. So if you notice that the police department parking lot is not proceeding, it is as of planned, right? They didn't start in time to finish it, and so we're working with them, and we will recommence construction in the spring. Thank you.
I think.
We finally got here. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My item tonight on the council member reports was basically a request to get an update on where we stand with our SB 54 decision that we made as a council many months ago. And if Mr. Schroeder, you could just jump in and just give us basically a summary on where we stand with that.
Yeah, I was going to write something up, but it was just going to be 1 or 2 lines from what you've already done.
Yeah.
Just to bring everybody up to speed, several months ago, the council voted to oppose SB 54, AB 403, and AB 103, which are, we'll generally call them the sanctuary legislation, which made California a sanctuary state by some definitions. That means that police officers cannot share certain kinds of information with undocumented immigrants with the Customs and Enforcement Agency. That also put limitations on, or actually opened up facilities that ICE runs in California to inspection by state officials. And limited the amount of information private employers can give to ICE about their undocumented workers. This council voted to oppose that and to support a federal lawsuit that had been filed to overturn that legislation. The lawsuit was dismissed by the federal district court, and the federal government then appealed the dismissal. This council voted to join a brief with 6 other cities in California to support the federal government's appeal. So you're part of the proceedings now. The only thing that's happened since then is that the arguments for the appeal are now scheduled for March 13th. So there'll be an argument by both sides, the federal and the state government, on whether or not the dismissal of the federal lawsuit stands or whether it's overturned and sent back for trial. We have an attorney that's been assisting us in all of this, and he'll be at that proceeding. He's representing other cities also, and so he'll report back to us on how that comes out.
Great, thank you, Mr. Schroeder. I think that's a very good summary of where we stand on that. And then, Madam Mayor, I would just like to say one more thing, and it's directed at the chief. Our community relies on the chief and his department. We rely on Sheriff Youngblood and his deputies to ensure that we are safe. As we all know, I mean, we've watched the news on what happened Christmas Day night up north. It is nothing but a tragedy when we have something happen like happened in Newman, California. And I think our community, our citizens, we owe a significant amount of thanks to those who are our protectors. We rely on the police department, the sheriff's department, and other agencies within our government to be at our beckoning call when something happens that we are not comfortable with. When we lose a police officer, it impacts every one of us to the deepest level, because what that says is we have an element in our society that has little to no respect for the people that protect us. And Chief, I would like to personally thank, and I would like to also thank on behalf of our community, the work that you do. I would like to thank your officers that go out and literally risk their lives to do the job that they signed up to do to protect us. So on that, thank you, Chief, for that, and please convey that to the officers. It is very important that they understand that they are a very highly valued component of our society. So, thank you very much.
At this time, we will adjourn into closed session. If any votes are taken, the city attorney will report back in this room. Thank you very much.